October 4th, 1944, the North Atlantic. The temperature is 25 degrees below zero. The wind screams through the icebergs like a death knell. Standing on the bridge of the icebreaker USS Eastwind, Captain Frank Iceberg Mitchell keeps his binoculars fixed on a dark, blurry smudge on a desolate island in the distance. This isn't the burning jungles of the Pacific. This is the invisible front, where the war isn't decided by bullets, but by weather reports. Here, the enemy isn't just the Nazis, it is nature itself. For the past 6 months, naval intelligence has intercepted strange radio signals pulsing from this frozen sector. Short, broken bursts, encrypted by Enigma machines, beaming directly to Berlin. These are meteorological reports. If Admiral Karl Dönitz knows where a storm is forming, he can direct his U-boat wolf packs to ambush Allied convoys or dive deep to evade detection. A single accurate weather report from this remote rock is worth as much as an entire fleet of destroyers. Mitchell's mission is to blind Hitler's eyes in the north. Prepare to land. Mitchell's order comes over the radio, his voice as cold and sharp as metal striking metal. Behind him, the Special Reconnaissance Platoon checks their weapons. These are not standard Marines. They are snow ghosts, specially trained for Arctic warfare. Their Thompson submachine guns are wrapped in white cloth to camouflage against the ice and prevent the oil from freezing. Grenades hang heavy from their thick parkas. Their target is a natural cave deep within a sheer cliff face, suspected to be the secret Nazi observation post, codenamed Edelweiss II. But there is something intelligence didn't tell them. Aerial reconnaissance photos taken 3 days ago revealed a disturbing detail. Sled tracks leading into the cave, but none coming out. Even more alarming, the station's radio antenna stopped transmitting 12 hours before the American ship arrived. This silence is more terrifying than the sound of gunfire. Have the Germans evacuated? Or are they waiting in the shadows of the rock, fingers resting on the triggers of MG-42 seconds? 3 LCVP landing craft break away from the USS Eastwind, tearing through the jagged ice floes. Black ocean water slams against the hulls. Every man aboard knows the stakes. Falling into this water means death from thermal shock in less than 90 seconds. As the ramp hits the permafrost of the beach, Mitchell is the first into the knee-deep snow. He signals the advance. The squad fans out, moving silently toward the gaping black mouth of the cave, 200 meters away. As they draw closer, the scale of the sight becomes clear. This is no simple hole in the rock. The entrance has been reinforced with concrete and steel. A thick power cable runs along the cliff face, half buried in the drift. This isn't a temporary outpost. It is a fortress. Suddenly, Sergeant Miller, the point man, raises a fist. Halt! He points to an object half buried in the snow, 50 meters from the entrance. Mitchell crawls forward to inspect it. It is a German Stahlhelm. Beside the helmet lies a patch of blood, frozen solid into a black stain on the ice. There is no body, just the blood and the abandoned gear. It suggests a struggle, or a panicked retreat, but who could have attacked them at the end of the world? Safety off. Ready to engage, Mitchell whispers. A chill runs down his spine that has nothing to do with the Arctic air. Something is wrong here, very wrong. They step into the mouth of the cave. Darkness swallows the reconnaissance squad. A heavy smell hits them immediately, the stench of diesel fuel, mixed with the unmistakable odor of gunpowder and burning paper. The beam of Mitchell's flashlight slices through the gloom, revealing that the natural cavern is only a facade. 10 yards in, the rough, jagged rock abruptly gives way to smooth, cold concrete. Steel beams arch overhead, supporting the millions of tons of mountain above them. This is not a simple weather observation post. It is a fully pressurized bunker complex, built to survive the apocalypse. The squad moves in a tactical column, boots crunching softly on the grit that litters the floor. The silence here is oppressive, amplified by the faint, rhythmic dripping of condensation from the ventilation ducts. The air is stagnant, warmer than the freezing gale outside, but somehow heavier. It tastes of recycled oxygen and fear. They pass a row of heavy blast doors, all standing wide open. Inside the first chamber, the beam of a flashlight sweeps across a scene frozen in time. It is a mess hall, but it looks less like a military facility and more like the aftermath of a riot. Metal trays are scattered across the floor. A pot of stew, now frozen into a solid block of brown ice, sits overturned on a table. A deck of playing cards is strewn across the bench, the king of hearts lying face up in a pool of something dark and sticky. Mitchell signals for a halt. He kneels by the cards. He touches the dark stain. It isn't oil, it is blood, but there are no bodies. Not yet. The signs of struggle are everywhere. Bullet holes pockmark the concrete walls, and deep gouges in the steel tables suggest hand-to-hand combat. Whatever happened here, it wasn't an attack from the outside. The garrison turned on itself. Moving deeper, the tunnel widens. The hum of machinery grows louder, a low, throbbing vibration that can be felt in the teeth. The generator is still running. This means there is still power, still life in the veins of this concrete beast. Sergeant Miller kicks open a door marked Unterkünfte Barracks. The smell hits them first. It is the copper tang of death, old and settled. Flashlights sweep the room. Bunks are unmade, blankets torn. In the corner, huddled beneath a steel locker, they find the first casualty. It is a radio operator, headphones still around his neck. He is slumped against the wall, a Walther P-38 pistol lying loosely in his grip. The hole in his temple tells the story of a suicide. But as Mitchell steps closer, he sees something else. A leather satchel is handcuffed to the dead man's wrist. The lock has been shot off, and the satchel is empty. Someone got to him after he died. Someone took whatever he was guarding with his life. "Check the perimeter," Mitchell whispers, his voice echoing too loudly in the confined space. The squad clears the room. No other threats, just the dead man and the mystery of the missing documents. Mitchell looks at the radio equipment on the desk. The tubes are cold, but the settings are dialed to a frequency that isn't used by the German Navy. It's a high-frequency band, usually reserved for direct diplomatic channels, or top-priority commands from the Führer bunker itself. Why would a radio operator in the middle of the Arctic be tuned to Berlin's private channel? And why kill himself instead of destroying the equipment? They push on. The tunnel begins to slope downward, spiraling into the heart of the island. The air gets warmer. The hum of the generator becomes a roar. They reach a junction. To the left, the sign reads Maschinenraum Engine Room. To the right, a heavy steel door, reinforced with rivets and sealed with a pressure wheel. The sign above it sends a jolt of adrenaline through Mitchell's veins. It doesn't say weather control. It reads Sonderkommandobereich, Special Command Area, Restricted Access. And the wheel on the heavy steel door is slowly, almost imperceptibly, turning from the inside. The heavy steel wheel screeches against the rust, turning inch by agonizing inch. Mitchell doesn't wait. He knows that in close-quarters combat, hesitation is a death sentence. He signals Miller and Kowalski. They stack up on either side of the frame. The moment the seal breaks with a hiss of escaping air, Mitchell kicks the door inward. "Marines, don't move." They storm into the special command area. It isn't a dark, damp cave. It is a blindingly lit operations center, humming with the sound of teletype machines. The air is thick with a choking gray smoke. The smell is acrid burning celluloid and chemical accelerants. In the center of the room, amidst a labyrinth of radio equipment and plotting tables, two figures are frantically feeding documents into a metal incinerator drum. One is a Wehrmacht officer in a pristine uniform, the Iron Cross at his throat catching the harsh overhead light. The other is a civilian, wearing a white lab coat stained with grease and soot. The officer reaches for a Luger on the desk. It is a reflex, a final act of defiance ingrained by years of indoctrination. But he is too slow. A burst of warning fire from Miller's Thompson shatters the glass map board behind him. The officer freezes, his hand hovering over the weapon. The fight leaves his eyes. He slowly raises his hands, a look of utter defeat replacing the fanaticism. "Secure them! Put out that fire!" Mitchell barks. Kowalski rushes to the burn barrel, kicking it over and stomping on the smoldering pile of papers with his heavy boots. He grabs a fire extinguisher from the wall and douses the flames in a cloud of white chemical dust. The civilian in the lab coat collapses into a chair, burying his face in his hands, weeping silently. The room is secured. The threat is neutralized. But the real battle, the battle for information, has just begun. Mitchell holsters his weapon and walks to the plotting table. It is covered in nautical charts of the North Atlantic and the eastern seaboard of the United States. Red lines crisscross the ocean, converging on major American cities: New York, Boston, Washington, D.C. This was never just a weather station. It was a forward command post for something much larger. Mitchell turns his attention to the teletype machine in the corner. It is a Siemens T-52, a high-level encryption device used only for the most sensitive communications. It is still running, the paper ribbon spilling onto the floor like a serpent. He picks up the end of the tape. The ink is still wet. The message is not in code. It was decoded just minutes before the Marines breached the door. The header bears the stamp of the Führer headquarters in Berlin. The date is October 1st, 1944. Mitchell reads the first few lines, his limited German enough to understand the gravity of what he is holding. These aren't standard operational updates. They are direct directives for a Götterdämmerung, a twilight of the gods. The order commands the activation of Asset 9. It authorizes the use of a weapon system that intelligence didn't even know existed, and the coordinates for the launch are not in Germany. They are here, on this island. Mitchell looks at the German officer. The man is smiling, now a cold, humorless smile. "You are too late, Captain," the German says in perfect English. "The order has already been acknowledged. The mechanism is already in motion." Suddenly, a deep, mechanical groan reverberates through the floor. The entire bunker vibrates. It isn't an earthquake. Somewhere, deep beneath their feet, massive bay doors are opening. The floor beneath them shudders violently, knocking a radio receiver off the table. The deep mechanical groan of the bay doors opening echoes through the rock, loud enough to drown out the hum of the teletype machines. It is the sound of heavy industry waking up. Mitchell grabs the civilian scientist by the lapels of his dirty lab coat. The man is trembling, his eyes darting between the defiant officer and the American captain. Where does that door lead? Mitchell screams over the noise. What is Asset 9? The scientist stammers, his English broken and terrified. The silo. Deep shaft. It is the A-10. The transatlantic stage. You cannot stop it. The fueling. It is finished. Mitchell doesn't wait for more. He shoves the scientist toward the heavy blast door on the far side of the room. "Move! Take us there!" Leaving 2 Marines to guard the German officer and the comms equipment, Mitchell, Sergeant Miller, and the rest of the squad sprint into the corridor. The air here is freezing cold again. They are leaving the heated command center and entering the operational heart of the facility. The tunnel slopes sharply downward, cut directly into the volcanic basalt of the island. As they run, the smell changes. The scent of burning paper is replaced by something far more chemical and terrifying. The sting of ozone and the sweet, suffocating odor of liquid oxygen. It is the smell of Peenemünde, the smell of rocketry. They burst through a final set of double doors and stop dead in their tracks. They have entered a cavern so vast it defies logic. It is a hollowed-out cathedral of ice and stone, stretching upwards for hundreds of feet toward a slit in the ceiling where the Arctic sky is just visible. Snowflakes drift down from the opening, melting as they hit the steam rising from the center of the pit. And there it stands. Rising from a massive steel launch pad is a rocket unlike anything the Allies have ever seen. It dwarfs the V-2 rockets raining down on London. This is a 2-stage behemoth, painted entirely in radar-absorbing black. It is sleek, terrifying, and advanced beyond its time. Frost crusts the fuselage, where the supercooled fuel tanks are filled to capacity. "My God," Miller whispers. "It's big enough to hit the moon." "No," Mitchell replies, his eyes fixing on the guidance fins. "Not the moon. New York. This is the America bomber, the weapon Hitler promised would turn the tide of the war, a missile capable of crossing the Atlantic in 30 minutes. And sitting atop the second stage isn't a conventional explosive warhead. It is a canister marked with the same yellow and black hazard symbols Mitchell saw in the briefing files for the Manhattan Project. Radiological material, or perhaps biological. Suddenly, a klaxon blares, echoing off the cavern walls. A red warning light begins to rotate near the gantry. The venting steam from the rocket's base turns into a violent hiss. The turbopumps are spinning up. "It's launching!" Kowalski yells. "Captain, we have to blow it." Mitchell looks at his squad. They have hand grenades and a few blocks of TNT, enough to take out a bunker door, but against this Leviathan, it would be like throwing pebbles at a tank. The rocket is armored, and shooting the fuel tanks with small arms might just cause a leak, not a catastrophic failure before it lifts off. They need to sever the brain, not the body. Mitchell scans the gantry. A thick bundle of cables snakes from the rocket's base into a concrete blockhouse suspended halfway up the cavern wall. The firing control room. Miller, take the squad and suppress any guards on the ground floor. Mitchell orders. Kowalski, you're with me. We're going for that blockhouse. As they sprint across the gantry, the roar of the rocket engines igniting begins a low, earth-shaking rumble that threatens to collapse the cavern itself. The countdown has begun. They have less than 2 minutes before the black rocket leaves the ground, carrying death to the American East Coast. The metal grating beneath Mitchell's boots vibrates with such intensity it feels like the steel is trying to liquefy. The roar of the A-10's engines is no longer just a sound. It is a physical pressure wave slamming against his chest, making it hard to breathe. The air in the cavern is rapidly heating up, transforming the freezing Arctic atmosphere into a suffocating sauna of steam and exhaust fumes. Keep moving! Don't look down! Mitchell screams, though he can barely hear his own voice over the turbine whine. Below them, on the concrete floor of the silo, the battle has erupted into chaos. Sergeant Miller and the rest of the squad are pinned down behind crates of machinery. Tracers from German MP 42nds streak through the steam like angry hornets. The maintenance crew and the SS guards are fighting with the desperation of men who know they have nowhere to run. They aren't trying to survive. They are trying to buy time for the rocket to launch. Mitchell and Kowalski sprint along the suspended catwalk, 60 feet above the floor. They are exposed. A bullet ricochets off the handrail, sending hot metal fragments into Mitchell's cheek. He doesn't flinch. His eyes are locked on the reinforced concrete blockhouse hanging from the cavern wall ahead. The firing control room, 30 yards, 20 yards. Suddenly, the heavy steel door of the blockhouse swings open. A German officer steps out onto the gantry, leveling a rifle. There is no time to take cover. It is a duel of reflexes amidst the thunder of ignition. Mitchell fires from the hip. The heavy, 45 caliber rounds from his Thompsons slam into the officer's chest before he can pull the trigger. The man falls backward, his body tumbling over the railing and disappearing into the steam clouds below. Breaching charge, now, Mitchell yells as they reach the door. Kowalski slams a block of C4 against the lock mechanism, pulling the friction igniter. They both dive away, pressing their bodies flat against the cold metal of the walkway. Boom. The explosion is swallowed by the roar of the rocket, but the shockwave blows the heavy door inward, twisting it off its hinges. Smoke billows out. Mitchell goes in first, weapon raised. Inside, the control room is a stark contrast to the chaos outside. It is soundproofed, eerily quiet except for the muffled rumble of the launch. Banks of oscilloscopes glow green in the dim light. 3 technicians in white coats are huddled over a massive control console, their hands flying across switches and dials. They don't reach for weapons. They don't even look up. They are completely absorbed in their task, chanting out telemetry data in German with fanatical precision. Hands off the console. Step away, Mitchell commands, leveling his weapon at the lead scientist. The head technician, a gaunt man with wire-rimmed glasses, slowly turns. His hand is resting on a large red lever that has been pulled all the way down. He looks at Mitchell with a mix of terror and triumph. It is locked in, the scientist says, his voice trembling. The turbo pumps are at full pressure. The clamps. They release in 40 seconds. Mitchell rushes to the console. It is a nightmare of analog technology, hundreds of dials, gauges, and levers labeled in technical German. There is no abort button. There is no key to turn it off. This machine was built to do one thing. Fly. Kowalski, find the fuel cutoff. There has to be a valve, a switch, something. Kowalski frantically scans the panels. Captain, I don't read German. I don't know what I'm looking at. Through the thick observation glass, Mitchell sees the rocket. The hold-down clamps at the base are beginning to retract. The flames beneath the engine bell are turning from orange to a blinding, transparent blue. The thrust is building. The scientist laughs. A dry, cracking sound. You cannot stop physics, Captain. The sequence is mechanical. Once the pressure reaches the combustion chamber, the valves lock open. It is a dead man's switch. Even if you kill us, New York burns. Mitchell looks at the scientist, then at the massive bundle of cables running from the console, through the wall, and out toward the rocket. We don't need to stop the physics, Mitchell growls, reversing his weapon to use the stock as a club. We just need to cut the brain from the body. Mitchell doesn't hesitate. He swings the heavy wooden stock of his Thompson submachine gun against the thick bundle of cables running from the console into the wall. The impact shudders through his arms, but the conduit holds. It is wrapped in a mesh of braided steel, designed to survive an air raid. "It's armored," Mitchell yells, the desperation creeping into his voice. Outside the thick observation glass, the scene has turned into a vision of hell. The A-10 rocket is no longer just sitting on the pad. It is fighting against its own restraints. The blue flame has turned white-hot, melting the concrete of the flame trench below. The entire blockhouse is shaking so violently that the scientist falls to his knees, clutching the leg of a chair. "Kowalski, the junction box. Shoot it out," Mitchell orders, pointing to the panel where the cables meet the wall. Kowalski steps forward, bracing his legs against the tremors. He levels his weapon and squeezes the trigger. The deafening rattle of .45 caliber rounds fills the small room, competing with the roar of the rocket engines outside. Brass casings rain onto the floor. Sparks shower from the wall as the bullets chew through the metal casing, shredding the insulation and the copper wires within. One by one, the banks of green lights on the main console flicker and die. The oscillating needles drop to zero. The telemetry screens fade to black. The brain of the beast has been lobotomized. "Cease fire!" Mitchell yells. Silence returns to the control room, or as much silence as possible with a rocket screaming outside. Smoke curls from the ruined junction box. Mitchell looks out the window, expecting the engine to cut out, expecting the flame to die down. But the fire rages on. The scientist slowly stands up, his face drained of all color. He walks to the window and places a trembling hand against the glass. He isn't looking at the engine. He is looking at the massive hydraulic clamps gripping the base of the fuselage. "You fool," the German whispers, his voice barely audible. "You didn't stop the fuel. You stopped the release signal." Mitchell grabs him by the shoulder and spins him around. "What does that mean? Speak English." "The valves are mechanical," the scientist screams, hysteria taking over. "They are locked open. The fuel will keep flowing until the tanks are empty. But you cut the power to the hold-down clamps. They will not unlock. The rocket is trying to fly, but it is chained to the ground." Mitchell looks back at the rocket. The metal of the fuselage is beginning to groan under the impossible stress. The rivets popping sound like gunshots. The engine is pushing with 50 tons of thrust, but the clamps are holding it fast. The energy has nowhere to go. The vibration is tearing the silo apart from the inside out. "It will not launch," the scientist says, a tear rolling down his soot-stained cheek. "It will detonate. Here, now. We are standing inside the largest bomb ever built." The realization hits Mitchell like a physical blow. They haven't disarmed the weapon. They have triggered a catastrophic failure. The liquid oxygen and ethanol tanks are beginning to buckle. If they rupture and mix, the explosion will vaporize the entire island. "Evacuate," Mitchell bellows into his radio, cutting through the static. "Miller, get the squad out. Abort! Abort! It's going to blow!" He shoves Kowalski toward the door. "Run! Back to the surface. Go!" They scramble out of the blockhouse, back onto the vibrating gantry. The heat is now unbearable. The air is shimmering. Below them, on the silo floor, the German guards have stopped shooting. They too realize what is happening. Everyone, American and Nazi alike, is running for the exit tunnels. But as Mitchell looks back one last time, he sees something that freezes his blood. The vibration has shaken something loose near the warhead. The canister marked with the radiation symbols is tilting. The clamps holding the payload are failing. If that canister falls into the inferno below before they get clear, the explosion won't just kill them. It will spread a cloud of radioactive death across the entire North Atlantic jet stream. The cavern has become a blast furnace. The air itself is burning. As Mitchell and Kowalski sprint up the inclined tunnel leading away from the silo, the heat rising from the pit chases them like a physical predator. The metal grating of the catwalks below is glowing cherry red, losing its structural integrity. Behind them, the A-10 rocket is dying a violent death. The 50 tons of thrust, with nowhere to go, are compressing the fuselage. The sleek black skin of the missile wrinkles like paper. High-pressure fuel lines rupture, spraying gallons of ethanol onto the superheated exhaust manifold. Whoosh! A secondary explosion rips through the base of the silo. A fireball rolls up the cavern walls, consuming the oxygen and replacing it with choking black smoke. The scream of the engines changes pitch from a steady roar to a jagged, tearing shriek as the turbopumps disintegrate. Mitchell risks a glance over his shoulder. Through the haze, he sees the German soldiers on the floor of the silo. They aren't shooting anymore. They aren't even running. They are cowering behind the crates, covering their heads as the world collapses around them. One man, his uniform on fire, leaps from the gantry into the flame trench below, choosing a quick death over the suffocating heat. "Don't look back. Move," Mitchell shouts, grabbing Kowalski by the webbing of his gear and hauling him up the steep concrete ramp. The tunnel is shaking so hard that keeping their footing is a battle against gravity itself. Debris falls from the ceiling, chunks of rock and fluorescent light fixtures shattering on the floor. The sound is deafening, a continuous thunder that rattles the teeth in their skulls. They reach the upper landing, the entrance to the special command area where they had breached the door just minutes ago. The 2 Marines Mitchell left behind are there, eyes wide with terror, struggling to keep their footing as the floor pitches like the deck of a ship in a typhoon. The blast doors. Mitchell screams, pointing to the massive steel barrier that separates the silo tunnel from the rest of the bunker complex. "We have to seal the silo. If that rocket goes up, the shock wave will gut the entire island. It is a suicide run." To close the doors, they have to stop running away from the explosion and stand their ground at the edge of the inferno. Mitchell and Miller grab the heavy iron wheel of the locking mechanism. It is hot to the touch. They strain against it, their boots sliding on the grit. Slowly, agonizingly, the 2-foot-thick steel slabs begin to grind shut. Through the narrowing gap, Mitchell sees the final moment of the A-10. The structural supports give way. The massive black rocket tilts. The clamps at the base finally snap, not releasing the bird to fly, but breaking under the torque. The nose of the rocket slams into the cavern wall. The payload section, the canister marked with the yellow and black hazard symbols, shears off. It tumbles through the air, spinning end over end, falling toward the lake of fire pooling at the bottom of the pit. "Close it! Now!" Mitchell roars, putting every ounce of his strength into the wheel. The blast doors slam together with a metallic clang that rivals the noise of the dying rocket. Mitchell spins the locking wheel, engaging the pressure seals just as the main fuel tanks inside the silo detonate. Thump. The explosion is muffled by the steel and concrete, but the shockwave is transmitted through the rock. The floor jumps a foot into the air. Mitchell and his men are thrown violently against the walls. The lights in the corridor flicker and die, plunging them into absolute darkness. For a moment, there is only the ringing in their ears and the smell of dust. Then, the red emergency lights flicker on, casting long, bloody shadows. They are alive, the door held. But as Mitchell picks himself up, coughing the dust from his lungs, he realizes the nightmare isn't over. The explosion didn't just destroy the rocket, it destabilized the volcanic island itself. The floor beneath them tilts at a sickening angle. Deep cracks are appearing in the concrete walls of the bunker. Water begins to spray from ruptured pipes, not fresh water, but salt water. The explosion has cracked the foundation. The Atlantic Ocean is flooding in. "We're below sea level," Mitchell whispers, the realization cold in his gut. "We didn't just blow up the rocket. We blew the plug." The water hits them first, a wall of freezing slush, moving at the speed of a freight train. It surges up the corridor from the lower levels, swirling around their waists, instantly numbing their legs. This isn't just floodwater. It is the Arctic Ocean, forcing its way into the wound they just inflicted on the island. "Up! Get to the upper levels," Mitchell screams, spitting the brine from his mouth. The bunker is dying. The explosion in the silo has shattered the geological spine of the cavern. The concrete walls are groaning, cracking under the immense pressure of the rock shifting above. Light bulbs pop in sequence as the electrical grid shorts out, leaving them in a strobe light nightmare of flickering red emergency beacons. Mitchell grabs the German scientist by the collar of his ruined lab coat. The man is paralyzed by the cold, his teeth chattering so violently he can't speak. Kowalski has the SS officer, shoving the prisoner forward with the barrel of his Thompson. Even the fanaticism has drained from the German's face, replaced by the primal fear of drowning in the dark. They are running uphill, but the floor is slick with oil and ice. Every step is a battle against the current, dragging them back down toward the abyss. Debris floats past them, wooden crates, chairs, the body of a dead guard. The water level is rising terrifyingly fast, chasing them up the spiral tunnel. "Don't stop! If you stop, you freeze," Mitchell roars. His lungs burn. The air in the tunnel is rapidly cooling, condensing into a thick fog that limits visibility to a few feet. They scramble past the junction to the engine room. The heavy steel doors there have buckled inward. Inside, the massive diesel generators are already submerged, sizzling as the seawater hits the hot engine blocks. The heartbeat of the facility has stopped. The only sound now is the rushing water and the terrifying grinding of the mountain collapsing on itself. They reach the level of the mess hall. The water here is only ankle deep, but the angle of the floor is wrong. The entire complex has tilted 10 degrees to the east. Tables and benches have slid against the far wall, piling up into a barricade of steel furniture. "The entrance!" Miller shouts from the front of the column. "The main blast doors. They're jammed." Mitchell splashes forward. The heavy concrete doors leading to the surface, their only way out, are twisted in their frame. The earthquake, caused by the silo explosion, has shifted the lintel. There is a gap of only 6 inches at the bottom, far too small for a man to crawl through. Outside, through the crack, they can hear the wind howling, mocking them. They are trapped. "Explosives," Mitchell barks. "Do we have any C4 left?" Kowalski shakes his head, wiping water from his eyes. "We used the last block on the control room door, Captain. We're dry." The water behind them continues to rise, lapping at the threshold of the mess hall. In 10 minutes, this room will be a swimming pool. In 20, it will be a tomb. The German officer, leaning against the tilted wall, starts to laugh a hollow, jagged sound. The mountain. He gasps in English. It protects the secrets. It does not let go. Mitchell ignores him. He scans the room, his flashlight beam cutting through the gloom. There has to be another way. Ventilation? No. The ducts are too small. The elevator? A death trap. His eyes land on the pile of debris near the kitchen area. Buried under the overturned tables is a heavy-duty acetylene torch tank, likely used for maintenance. It's not an explosive, but it's pressurized gas. "Miller, grab that tank," Mitchell orders. "Kowalski, get the grenades. All of them. We're going to make our own door." It is a desperate plan. A shaped charge made of hand grenades and a gas cylinder detonated in an enclosed space. It could breach the jammed door, or it could bring the ceiling down on their heads, burying them alive before the water even gets the chance to finish the job. "Cover!" Mitchell yells as they rig the crude bomb against the twisted steel of the exit. They retreat behind the concrete pillar of the kitchen, dragging the prisoners with them. The water is now at their knees. The fuse is lit. 3, 2, 1. The explosion is not a clean cinematic boom. In the confined, waterlogged space of the mess hall, it is a physical hammer blow. The shockwave travels through the water, hitting the men like a solid wall, knocking the wind from their lungs and slamming them against the concrete pillars. For a few seconds, there is only a high-pitched ringing silence. Dust and pulverized concrete hang in the air, mixing with the steam from the ruptured pipes. Mitchell shakes the debris from his helmet. He can't hear anything, but he can see. The heavy steel blast door hasn't been blown off its hinges. It has been peeled back like the lid of a sardine can, the metal twisted and jagged, leaving a gap just wide enough for a man to squeeze through. "Go! Go! Go!" Mitchell screams, though he can barely hear his own voice. They scramble through the breach, tearing their uniforms on the sharp metal edges. The cold air from the surface hits them instantly, a freezing gale that freezes the seawater on their clothes within seconds. They are out of the bunker, but they are not safe. They emerge into a twilight nightmare. The Arctic sky is a swirling vortex of gray snow, but the ground beneath them is unrecognizable. The explosion of the A-10 rocket deep underground has done more than just destroy the silo. It has fractured the volcanic spine of the island. The Earth is groaning. Massive fissures are opening up in the permafrost, tearing the landscape apart. Steam vents are erupting from the cracks, hissing violently as the geothermal pressure seeks an escape. The island is literally tearing itself apart. "To the beach! Move!" Mitchell orders, checking his compass. The run to the shore is an obstacle course of death. The ground lurches violently with every step. Behind them, the ventilation stack of the bunker complex collapses, disappearing into a sinkhole that swallows the entire command center they were standing in just 10 minutes ago. The German scientist is lagging behind, his strength failing. Sergeant Miller grabs him by the arm, dragging him forward. "Don't you die on me now! Move!" But the SS officer is not so lucky. As they cross a ridge of ice-covered rock, the ground beneath him gives way. A fissure opens up with the sound of a cracking whip. There is no scream, no plea for help. One moment he is there, stumbling through the snow. The next, he is gone, swallowed by the darkness of the earth he sought to weaponize. Mitchell doesn't stop. In war, you save the living, you leave the dead. They crest the final ridge and see the ocean. The sight is terrifying. The shock wave from the underground blast has shattered the pack ice surrounding the island. The bay where they landed is now a churning soup of icebergs and black water. And there, a mile offshore, fighting against the swelling waves, is the USS Eastwind. The ship is pulling away to avoid the collapsing ice shelf. They are too far. The ship is leaving. Mitchell grabs the flare gun from his survival vest. His fingers are numb, clumsy with the cold. He breaks the barrel, loads a red phosphorus shell, and raises it toward the gray sky. Thump! The flare arcs high into the wind, burning with a brilliant, blinding crimson light against the storm. It hangs there for a second, a desperate star over a dying island. "Did they see it?" Kowalski yells, shielding his eyes against the stinging snow. Mitchell watches the ship. For a long, agonizing minute, nothing happens. The Eastwind continues to turn its bow toward the open sea. Then, a signal lamp on the ship's bridge begins to flash. Dash, dot, dash. "They see us," Mitchell shouts. "They're launching the boats." But as relief washes over them, a new sound cuts through the wind. A deep, rumbling crack that comes from the cliff face they are standing on. The explosion has destabilized the entire coastline. The shelf they are standing on is separating from the main island. They aren't just waiting for rescue. They are standing on a piece of land that is about to slide into the bottom of the Arctic Ocean. The ice shelf beneath their feet groans, a deep, resonant sound like the dying breath of a leviathan. A fissure, black and widening, races toward them, separating the cliff edge from the crumbling landmass. They are no longer on the island. They are on a raft of stone and permafrost, drifting into the churning abyss of the Arctic Ocean. The whaleboats from the USS Eastwind slam against the ice. Hands reach out rough, desperate hands hauling Mitchell, Miller, Kowalski, and the trembling German scientist over the gunwales. They tumble into the bottom of the boats, gasping for air, their uniforms stiffening with frost. "Go, full throttle! Get us clear!" the coxswain screams. The engines roar, fighting the chaotic swell. As they pull away, Mitchell looks back. He witnesses the end of Edelweiss II. The underground fire, fed by thousands of gallons of rocket fuel, and the island's own geothermal instability, finally breaches the surface. The top of the mountain simply disintegrates. A column of steam and debris shoots 2,000 feet into the gray sky. The shockwave flattens the waves around them. Then, with a sickening lurch, the entire southern face of the island slides into the sea. The secret base, the silos, the barracks, and the dead men inside all of it is swallowed by the black water. In minutes, there is nothing left but a cloud of steam and a vortex of debris spinning in the ocean currents. Safely aboard the USS Eastwind, Captain Mitchell stands on the bridge, wrapped in a wool blanket, watching the horizon settle. He holds the only evidence that remains, the strip of teletype paper he snatched from the machine in the command center. He reads the translation provided by the ship's intelligence officer. These were indeed Hitler's last orders to the Arctic Command. They were not just launch coordinates. They were a directive for total annihilation. The A-10 rocket was not meant to be a strategic weapon to win the war. It was a vengeance weapon. The payload wasn't just explosives. It was a dirty bomb, designed to render the American coastline uninhabitable for generations. If the Reich falls, the order read. The world must burn with it. The German scientist, Heinrich Vogel, was taken below decks. He would never stand trial. Like many of his colleagues, he vanished into the machinery of American intelligence, his knowledge of rocketry trading his life for his freedom, the beginning of what would become Operation Paperclip. The logbooks of the USS Eastwind for that day recorded a severe seismic event and a volcanic eruption in the sector. There was no mention of Marines, no mention of a bunker, no mention of the black rocket that almost ended the world. The mission was classified top secret. The men of the Special Reconnaissance Platoon were ordered to never speak of what they saw in the ice. Frank Iceberg Mitchell survived the war. He returned to civilian life, raising a family in Ohio. But his wife often said that on stormy winter nights, he would stand by the window, staring out at the falling snow, his hands trembling as if he could still feel the vibration of the gantry under his boots. He died in 1982, taking the secret of the A-10 to his grave. History books will tell you the V-2 was the pinnacle of Nazi rocketry. They will tell you the war ended in Berlin. But the men who stood on that freezing island know the truth. The final battle of World War II didn't happen in a bunker in Germany. It happened in a hollowed-out volcano at the edge of the world, where a handful of Marines stopped the clock just seconds before midnight. The ocean keeps its secrets. The island is gone. But the orders remain. A chilling reminder of how close we came to the edge. If this story kept you on the edge of your seat, hit that like button. It helps us uncover more forgotten chapters of history. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a mission. And tell us in the comments, what other secrets do you think are still hidden in the ice? This is the story of the day the Marines saved New York, and the world never knew.